Welcome, brave souls, to Haunted Hash, the only channel where stories slip past the veil and into the next level of fear, where the shadows whisper truths too dark to ignore. Tonight, we unravel an hour of true terror, stories pulled from the depths of reality, each more chilling than the last. Light a candle, lock your doors, and listen closely. For these tales are not mere fiction. They're etched in the annals of fear, waiting to crawl into your dreams. Before the night pulls you into sleep, remember to subscribe so you never miss the darkness waiting in the next story. Our journey begins with a scarecrow named Harold, born of cruelty in a quiet mountain farm, and weaves through other haunting echoes of the past. In the summer of 1975, deep in the rolling hills of rural Pennsylvania, two brothers, Ethan and James Carver, tended their family's dairy farm. The days dragged, hot, monotonous, with only the lowing cows for company. Boredom bred mischief, and one afternoon, under a sky heavy with gray clouds, they decided to craft a scarecrow. They named him Harold after a neighbor they loathed, a stern man with a perpetual scowl. Using old burlap, mismatched buttons for eyes, and a tattered hat, they stuffed him with straw and propped him in the field. But this wasn't just a guardian for the crops, they took it further. Ethan grinned as he kicked Harold's leg, the straw crunching under his boot. James smeared mud across the burlap face, laughing as he added a smear of jam, letting flies buzz around it. "Look at him now," Ethan sneered. "Just like old Harold." For weeks, this became their ritual, punches, taunts, leaving Harold battered under the sun. Then one humid evening, as the brothers lounged in their rickety barn loft, a grunt echoed from below. They froze, exchanging glances. "Probably a mouse," James muttered, but his voice trembled. The next day, Harold's arm hung lower as if shifted. They laughed it off, but the air felt thicker, the silence heavier. Days turned to weeks. Harold's straw seemed to swell, his frame growing taut. One moonless night, a rhythmic trotting sounded overhead. Ethan peeked out, his breath catching. Harold stood on the roof, his button eyes glinting, straw limbs moving with unnatural grace. James screamed, "What have we done?" They grabbed their cows and fled down the mountain trail, the air thick with the scent of pine and fear. But Ethan, stubborn as ever, returned the next dawn for their milking stools. The barn was silent until a wet, ripping sound broke the stillness. Later, hikers found his skin flayed and drying on a fence. Harold gone. Was it revenge? Or something older waking? Let's shift our gaze now to the dense forests of Oregon in 1998. Sarah Mitchell, a 28-year-old hiker, loved the solitude of the Pinewood Trail, a winding path lined with towering pines and the faint scent of moss. She'd walked it dozens of times, her boots crunching familiar ground. But on October 14th, something changed. The air grew still, the usual bird calls silenced. As dusk fell, she heard it, a whisper, soft as a breath, calling her name. "Sarah," it hissed from the trees ahead. She froze, heart pounding, scanning the shadows. Nothing but branches swaying in a wind that wasn't there. Shaking it off, she pressed on, but the whispers followed, growing louder, overlapping. Dozens of voices, male and female, young and old. Her flashlight flickered, casting jagged shadows. Then on a bend near an old oak, she saw them, footprints in the mud, barefoot, too small for an adult, trailing off into the undergrowth. Panic gripped her, but curiosity pulled her forward. The whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by a low hum like a swarm approaching. She turned back, running, branches clawing at her jacket. At home, she found muddy handprints on her pack, tiny, childlike, yet the trail was empty when she'd passed. Weeks later, a park ranger found her tent abandoned, her journal open to a frantic scrawl. There in the trees, watching. Searches turned up nothing, no children, no tracks beyond hers. Locals whisper of lost settlers, their spirits trapped, seeking company. But why Sarah? And are they still there, waiting for the next hiker? Our next tale takes us to the quiet suburbs of Ohio, 2003. Emily Hart, a 17-year-old senior, volunteered to clean her old middle school, Lincoln Heights, after hours. The building stood abandoned since a fire gutted the East Wing in '98. Its halls filled with the musty smell of damp plaster and old books. She'd always found comfort in its familiar creaks, but that night, October 23rd, felt different. The air was thick, the silence oppressive. As she dusted the library, a chalkboard screeched behind her, short, sharp, like a child's clumsy hand. She turned, heart racing, but the room was empty, the board unmarked. Shaking her head, Emily moved to the classroom next door, her flashlight beam dancing across faded posters. Then she heard it, a giggle, soft and high-pitched, coming from the corner. Her light caught a desk rocking slightly as if just vacated. "Hello?" she called, her voice echoing off the walls. No answer, but the temperature dropped, her breath visible in the cold. On the blackboard, words appeared slowly. "Stay with us." The letters were uneven, childlike, forming as if written by an invisible hand. Panic surged, and she ran, the giggle following, now a chorus of tiny voices. The next morning, her car was found in the lot, keys in the ignition, but Emily was gone. Searchers found her phone in the auditorium, its recorder open. Hours of silence, then a final whisper. "We are not alone." Rumors speak of children trapped in the fire, their spirits lingering, luring the living to join them. But why Emily? And what waited in that darkness? So next, I'll take you somewhere very old, to a place where fog clings low and the sky never quite brightens, where memories echo like footsteps in an empty hallway. There is a house at the edge of the marsh. It has stood there for longer than anyone remembers. Some say no one lives there, others say it waits. Let us begin. Imagine a long, narrow path that winds through whispering reeds and soft, squelching mud. The marsh stretches out on either side, endless and still. Water glistens like dark glass, broken only by the occasional ripple, though nothing ever seems to cause it. Mist gathers low over the water, thick, pale, and always moving, not blown by wind, for there is no wind. Just movement, slow and deliberate, like breath from something very old. There are no birds here, no crickets or frogs, only the sound of your own footsteps and the soft lap-lap of water against unseen shores. At the end of the path stands the house, 3 stories tall, dark timbered, with a roof that slopes too sharply. Its windows are narrow, and though panes appear black from a distance, if you look long enough, you might see the faintest glow, as though someone or something watches from inside. The air smells of brine and rotting wood, yet not unpleasantly so. It is familiar somehow, like a scent remembered from a dream. The house makes no sound, no creaking wood, no shifting beams, only silence. A silence that hums. Elias arrived on a Tuesday, though he could no longer remember how many Tuesdays ago that was. He came with a suitcase that felt too light and a letter he never quite recalled reading. He was meant to stay just a few nights, to look over the property for someone, a distant relative or maybe an old friend. The details were vague, but the house welcomed him. The door had been unlocked, the hearth already set. A kettle sat on the stove as if the previous guest had just stepped out. Elias had unpacked slowly, though he noticed he brought fewer things than he remembered packing. The bedroom upstairs was cozy. A small window faced the marsh where mist shifted endlessly under the moonless sky. Each morning, Elias would walk to the edge of the dock, watching the water for signs of life. But there were never any birds, never any fish, only stillness and the fog. Inside the house, time behaved oddly. The grandfather clock in the sitting room ticked steadily, but its hands never moved. Candles melted slowly, but he could never remember lighting them. Sometimes when he climbed the stairs, there would be one more step than before. Just one. The house began to change. Elias noticed little things. The mirror in the hallway no longer showed his reflection. Instead, it held the shape of a boy, slight, pale, standing very still in the shadows. When Elias blinked, he was gone. The photographs on the walls were old, sepia-toned and water-stained. The people in them slowly turned their heads over days, just slightly, just enough. He wrote in a notebook each night, trying to make sense of what was real. But every morning, the pages were blank. Only faint impressions of words remained, as if the ink had been swallowed by the paper. One night, while half asleep, Elias heard the floorboards above him creak, softly, in measured, careful steps. He remembered then, there was no room above his own. The next morning, a door appeared at the end of the third-floor hallway, one he'd never noticed before. He reached for the knob. It was cold, humming faintly beneath his hand. He didn't open it, not that day, but the door never went away. It waited, patiently, like the house. Elias began to forget things, how long he'd been there, why he had come, even his own voice. He would wake in the night to the sound of gentle whispering behind the walls, voices too soft to understand, yet somehow familiar. The marsh outside never changed, the fog never lifted, and the dock seemed longer than before. On a night with no stars, Elias lit a lantern and climbed to the third floor. The door was still there, waiting. He placed his hand on the knob. It was warmer now, as though someone stood on the other side. He turned it slowly. The door opened, silently. Inside was a staircase that spiraled down, far deeper than the house should allow. Stone walls and slick and cold. Each step echoed downward, softly, endlessly. Elias descended. His lantern flickered but never went out. At the bottom, a corridor stretched into darkness. The walls pulsed gently as if breathing. And at the end of the hall stood another door. No knob, just wood. Old, wet, humming. He pressed his palm against it. It opened, and Elias stepped through. No one saw Elias leave. Not that anyone remembers him arriving. The house still stands at the edge of the marsh. Its windows remain dark, though sometimes a faint glow lingers behind the glass. Travelers who pass through say they feel a pull, a strange draw to the long path of reeds, to the place where birds do not sing and time moves like water, quiet, slow, inevitable. Some say the house is empty, others say it dreams, and if you listen very closely, you might hear footsteps in the fog or a whisper behind the wall. The next story is about an archivist, a candlelit sanctuary beneath time itself, where nothing is forgotten, but much is misplaced, and somewhere within it, she waits. The archivist. Imagine stone stairs that descend endlessly into earth, each step muffled by thick layers of velvet dust. The air grows cooler with every turn, wrapped in the scent of old parchment and candle wax. The silence here is not empty, it is patient. It listens, it remembers. The archive stretches in all directions. Hallways lined with towering bookshelves that reach far above and below. Some shelves are crooked, leaning with age. Others are perfect, too perfect. The books have no titles, some have no pages, but they hum when touched. A gentle thrum beneath the fingertips like a sleeping heartbeat. Candles light themselves when you enter a room, never all at once. One by one in polite sequence. There are no clocks here. And yet the air knows the difference between moments. Footsteps echo too far. Corridors branch into unfamiliar angles. Some lead back to places you've already been, even if you never turned. At the archive's center is her desk. Her name is Leora. Or perhaps it was. The name is not important, she would say. Only the remembering. She wears layers of ink-stained robes, a shawl made of threadbare index cards. Her voice is soft, and it never rises. Each day she sits at her desk and catalogs what the archive offers. She does not search. She waits, and the archive brings. Sometimes a book with a single name, sometimes a box filled with feathers or teeth or stones that feel warm. Every object has a name, or did. She records them in her ledger, a thick volume that grows no matter how many pages she turns. She does not remember how long she has been here. She does not need to. She is part of the archive now, but recently, she has noticed something. A book arrived that she did not summon. Black cover. No spine, cold to the touch. Inside, the pages are filled, written in her own hand, but not in any language she knows. She flips to the last page. There, her name, written over and over and crossed out. Each night, she places it back on the shelf. Each morning, it is on her desk again. Candles burn lower than they should. Ink disappears before it dries. She begins to hear things, not voices exactly, more like breathing behind the shelves. A gentle rustle, like fingers turning pages in the dark. The books begin to resist. When she writes in the ledger, the letters drift slowly across the page, moving like insects. Sometimes she sees herself across the room, or someone who looks very much like her, always with her back turned. Always just out of reach. Corridors have changed. There is a hallway she does not remember cataloging. It hums with warmth, and the light is soft. She follows it. At the hallway's end is a door, smooth, polished, made of nothing she can name. It does not open with a key, only a name. She whispers hers, the one she remembers, the one the archive forgot. The door opens. Inside is a single book, bound in soft gray leather, her ledger. But it is not hers. This one is already full. Each page contains a version of her life, places she never visited. people she never loved. She reaches the final page, and there, her name, not crossed out but fading. She touches the ink. It ripples like water, and then she is gone. The archive remains, still, vast, whispering. The candle at the desk flickers, though no one is there. The book remains closed. Somewhere in the shelves, a name tries to remember itself. The books hum. The silence hums. And if you listen closely, you might hear a page turn. Rest now. The archive will remember you, even if you forget. Sleep. At the far end of a village no map has ever captured, sits a crooked cottage where time forgets itself. Its walls lean inward as if huddling close against secrets. The shutters are always slightly open, no matter the wind. Inside, gears tick gently, not loudly but softly, like heartbeats far away. Clocks fill the rooms, dozens of them, hundreds. No two show the same hour. Some count forward, some count down. And one in the corner beneath the staircase never moves at all, yet dust never gathers on it. Outside, the sky remains the same pale gray from dawn to dusk. The air hums quietly like the inside of a seashell. There are no birds here, no dogs barking, no footsteps, just ticking. And silence. The clockmaker lives alone. His name is Ivor, or was once. He moves with careful hands, each motion deliberate, as though the air around him might break. He speaks only to the clocks. He wakes before any of them strike and winds each one with fingers that never tremble. No one visits. They haven't for years, but still he prepares tea for two each morning. One cup always remains untouched. He forgets why. His walls are filled with blueprints of timepieces that never worked. But none are torn or thrown away. Each clock he builds is a little stranger than the last. One ticks only when he looks away. Another chimes at midnight, even though it has no bells. And one near the fireplace whispers instead of ticking. Just one word, repeated softly. Back. 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 The shadows in the cottage begin to stretch too far. His reflection in the glass cases begins to lag behind. He watches himself turn away and sees his face still staring. He winds a new clock, but when he wakes the next morning, it's already rusted. He opens a drawer for screws and finds a note he doesn't remember writing. Ivor, it reads, don't go down there. There is no signature, only a tiny gear taped beside it. He checks the attic, he checks the cellar, he finds neither. But one evening, when the light slips sideways and the clocks grow quiet, he finds a key. It is warm to the touch, and it does not fit any clock. That night, a new door appears beneath the stairs. It wasn't there yesterday, or perhaps it always was. He opens it. The stairs behind the door spiral down, farther than a cottage should allow. At the bottom is a room identical to the one above, but reversed. Everything mirrored, including himself. He sees his double seated at a workbench building a clock that matches the one he just finished. The other Ivor does not look up, but the ticking grows louder and louder. And then everything stops. He blinks. He is standing in the reversed room. The stairs behind him are gone. The clocks on the walls are familiar, his own, but younger. He sees blueprints he hasn't drawn yet, and tea for two, both cups steaming. He hears footsteps above, his own perhaps, or someone else's. He looks into the mirror, and for the first time his reflection moves before he does. It smiles gently and walks away. Time folds quietly here, like paper in slow water. The cottage remains, ticking, humming, dreaming. Each hour a little softer, each breath a little slower. Ivor forgets which version of himself he is, but the clocks remember. They always do. Now the wind outside hums a lullaby you almost remember. Sleep now. Let the hands of time wind you down. Let the ticking lead you out. Or in. It doesn't matter. Here, you are part of the clockwork, and the clockwork waits. The next story I'm about to tell is a story that begins with something innocent. A summer evening, a carnival, and the end of a family. It was the summer of 1986. Daniel was just a kid when his family, his parents and younger sister, took him to a traveling carnival that had set up on the outskirts of town. The kind of place with rusted rides, flickering lights, and game stalls that smelled like sweat and popcorn. But what stood out that night wasn't the Ferris wheel or the cotton candy. It was a performance. A man named Mr. Fulcrum, headliner of the carnival, was known for illusions that felt disturbingly real. His act drew huge crowds. That night, Daniel and his family sat in the second row, right near the stage. Mr. Fulcrum stepped out wearing a tailored coat, black top hat, and a grin that didn't quite touch his eyes. He asked for volunteers. Daniel's mother stood up first, then his father, then his sister. Daniel, too small and shy, remained seated watching them walk up under the spotlight. The magician smiled, raised his cane, and spoke softly. And now, they will vanish. A puff of violet smoke burst from the stage. When it cleared, Daniel's family was gone. The audience roared with applause, convinced it was part of the act. But Daniel waited and waited. They never came back. The show ended. The tent emptied. But Daniel stayed, frozen in his seat, watching the curtain. By midnight, the carnival began shutting down. Lights dimmed, rides creaked to a stop, but no one came to find him. No one noticed the boy sitting alone in the folding chair, staring at an empty stage. When Daniel finally walked home in the cold morning light, he was alone. The police searched. They questioned. They dismissed him. No evidence, no clues. And by sunrise, the carnival was gone, disappeared overnight without a trace. Daniel grew up in foster care, haunted by the memory. Everyone told him he imagined it, that his family had left, that the trauma had clouded his mind. But he knew what he saw. Years later, as an adult, Daniel spotted something that made his blood run cold. A flyer taped to a telephone pole. Mr. Fulcrum's magical carnival, one night only. He followed it, drove for miles, desperate for answers. The carnival looked identical, as if it had never aged. The red and gold tent stood like a wound against the night sky. Daniel stepped inside. Mr. Fulcrum was waiting. He greeted Daniel like an old friend. His voice was smooth as ever. His smile was unchanged. "You've come back," he said. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten them." Daniel demanded to know what had happened, where his family was, what he'd done to them. Fulcrum didn't answer. He only pulled aside the curtain. Behind it stood a tall mirror. But it didn't reflect Daniel. Instead, he saw his family, his mother, father, and sister, trapped inside the glass. Pale, lifeless. Their mouths moved in silence, as if screaming. Daniel reached for the mirror, but it was ice cold, solid, unmoving. "They belong to the show now," whispered Mr. Fulcrum. Daniel turned, grabbing a wooden stool, slamming it against the glass. Nothing happened. No cracks, no noise, only silence. And then the tent began to fade. One moment it was there, music, lights, the smell of smoke, and the next it was mist. Daniel ran, out of the tent, away from the field, back into the real world, but he wasn't alone. The mirror appeared in his apartment the next day. It stood against his bedroom wall, untouched, waiting, and his family was still there, staring. Sometimes, late at night, Daniel hears music from the other side of the mirror. Sometimes he hears laughter. Sometimes he sees Fulcrum, watching him from just behind the glass. If you ever see a flyer for Mr. Fulcrum's magical carnival, don't follow it, don't go. Some shows aren't meant to entertain, they're meant to feed. Our next story brings us to a suburban home in Illinois, 2010. Mark Reynolds, a 34-year-old widower, moved into a modest house on Elm Street with his 9-year-old daughter, Lily, after losing his wife to illness. The house was unremarkable: peeling paint, creaky floors, a faint mildew scent. But the attic mirror caught their eye. Framed in cracked wood, its glass was cloudy, reflecting distorted shapes. Lily loved it, claiming it showed her mother smiling. Mark indulged her, though the mirror's cold touch unnerved him. One night, as rain tapped the roof, he woke to Lily's giggle downstairs. Peering over the railing, he saw her before the mirror, whispering to her reflection. "Mommy says hi," she murmured, her voice echoing oddly. Mark's stomach churned. The reflection showed not Lily, but a woman with hollow eyes, her smile too wide. He yanked Lily away, the mirror fogging over. Days passed and the house grew colder. At night he heard dripping, not rain, but a steady plink from the attic. Checking, he found the mirror wet, its surface rippling like water. His reflection blinked out of sync, mouthing, "Join us." Panic set in, but Lily begged to see her mother again. Against his better judgment, he let her gaze into it once more. The next morning, Lily was gone. The mirror showed her playing with the hollow-eyed woman, both smiling. Mark smashed it, but shards reformed overnight. Neighbors heard laughter from the attic, yet found only silence. Was it grief manifesting or something trapped in the glass? And does it still watch, waiting for its next family? If you ever see a flyer for Mr. Fulcrum's magical carnival, don't follow it. Don't go. Some shows aren't meant to entertain. They're meant to feed. Next, we're heading to Pine Hollow, Wisconsin, 2015, for a story that's equal parts chilling and heartbreaking. It's about 3 teenagers, a forest, and a figure that shouldn't exist. This tale is inspired by a real event that shocked the world. But what happened in Pine Hollow? Well, it defies explanation. Let's get started. Picture a small town in Wisconsin, the kind where everyone knows your name and the woods stretch out like a dark, endless sea. Pine Hollow was quiet in 2015, still reeling from the news of a stabbing in nearby Waukesha the year before. You might remember that case. 2 young girls lured their friend into the woods and attacked her, claiming they did it for a figure called Slender Man, a tall, faceless man in a black suit born on the internet, a modern-day boogeyman. The news called it a tragedy, a case of kids lost in a fictional story. But in Pine Hollow, some whispered that the story wasn't as fictional as it seemed. It started with Lucy, a 14-year-old with a quiet voice and a knack for seeing things others didn't. Lucy was the kind of kid who spent hours reading creepy stories online. Creepypasta, they called it. She'd always been a bit sensitive, picking up on things that made others uneasy. In the fall of 2015, she started acting different. She'd walk home from band practice through the old oak trail, a winding path through Pine Hollow's dense forest. It was a shortcut, but locals avoided it after dark. They said the trees there felt alive, like they were watching you. One October evening, Lucy was cutting through the trail as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air was crisp, the leaves crunching under her sneakers. She told her friends later that she felt it first, a prickling on the back of her neck like someone was staring. She glanced around, expecting to see a deer or maybe a stray dog, but the woods were silent, too silent. That's when she saw it just beyond a gnarled oak tree, a figure impossibly tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet. It wore a black suit, pristine against the tangled branches, but its face... There was no face, just a smooth, pale void where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been. Lucy froze. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, but she swore she heard a sound, like static, the kind you get when a radio can't find a signal. Then her nose started bleeding, a warm trickle down her lip. She bolted, running faster than she ever had, not stopping until she was locked in her bedroom. That night, she dreamed of the figure standing outside her window, its featureless face pressed against the glass. The next day, Lucy told her friends Emma and Jack at a bonfire behind the high school. Emma, 15, was the cautious one, always second-guessing herself. Jack, also 15, was the skeptic, quick to laugh off anything he couldn't explain. Lucy's story made Emma uneasy, but Jack just rolled his eyes. "It's just that Slender Man nonsense," he said. "You read too much of that internet stuff, Lucy. It's not real." But Lucy wasn't so sure. She'd heard about the Waukesha girls, how they believed Slender Man was real enough to kill for. And there was something else. Her little brother Tim, only 8 years old, had started drawing strange pictures. A tall man in a suit with no face standing in the woods. Tim said he saw him outside his window at night. Emma tried to brush it off, but Lucy's fear was contagious. She started noticing things too. Her phone glitching when she walked near the oak trail, static flickering across the screen. Jack, though, wasn't convinced. He dared Lucy and Emma to go back to the woods with him to prove it was all in their heads. Lucy refused, saying she'd been sick since that night. Nosebleeds, headaches, nightmares. But Emma and Jack, maybe out of curiosity, maybe to prove a point, agreed to go the next night. October 15th, 2015 was cold, the kind of night where your breath hangs in the air. Emma and Jack met at the edge of the oak trail, flashlights in hand. Lucy was supposed to join them but texted Emma that she was too sick to come. The woods were darker than they expected, the trees looming like silent giants, their flashlights barely cut through the shadows. Emma kept hearing whispers, faint and indistinct like voices carried on the wind. Jack teased her, but even he was on edge. His phone started glitching too, the screen flashing static. They reached a clearing where the oak trail split, marked by a massive tree with gnarled roots. That's when they saw it, carved into the bark, a symbol, a circle with an X through it. Emma had seen it before in one of Lucy's creepypasta stories. It was tied to Slender Man, a mark of his presence. Jack laughed nervously, saying it was probably just vandals. But then the air changed. It got heavy, like a storm was coming. Their flashlights flickered, and that static hum filled the air, louder now, vibrating in their bones. Emma grabbed Jack's arm, pointing to the trees. There, just beyond the clearing, was a figure, tall, too tall, its head brushing the lower branches. A black suit clung to its thin frame, and where its face should have been, there was nothing, just pale, empty skin. It didn't move, but Emma swore it was closer than it had been a second ago. Jack tried to take a picture, but his phone froze, the screen a mess of static. The hum grew deafening, and Emma's nose started bleeding just like Lucy's. She screamed for Jack to run, and they did, stumbling through the dark, branches clawing at their faces. When they reached the edge of the woods, panting and terrified, they realized something was wrong. Sarah, their friend who joined them at the last minute, wasn't there. They'd been so focused on running that they hadn't noticed her fall behind. Emma called her name, but the woods were silent again, the static gone. They waited, hoping she'd catch up, but she never did. The next morning, Pine Hollow's police searched the woods. They found Sarah's backpack near the marked tree, but no sign of her. No footprints, no trail, just those strange scratches on the bark, deep, uneven, like something sharp had clawed at it. Emma told the police everything about the figure, the static, the symbol. The detective, a tired man named Harris, didn't buy it. He'd heard about the Waukesha case, how kids got caught up in Slender Man's stories. He figured Sarah ran off, maybe got lost. But Emma insisted she'd seen him. Jack backed her up, though he was too shaken to say much. His phone was useless, the photos corrupted with static. Then things got worse. Lucy, still sick, was rushed to the hospital, Laura, that same day. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. Nosebleeds, seizures, no clear cause. Emma visited her, desperate for answers. Lucy was pale, her voice barely a whisper. She told Emma, "He's in my head. I see him every time I close my eyes. He wants something." She pulled out one of Tim's drawings, the same faceless man, and pointed to the circle X symbol. "It's his mark," she said. "I saw it on the tree outside my window." Before Emma could ask more, Lucy's heart monitor spiked. The room filled with static, like a radio gone wrong. Nurses rushed in, but it was too late. Lucy was gone, her death unexplained. No heart attack, no stroke, just stopped. Emma couldn't let it go. She spent hours online, digging into Slender Man lore. She found stories calling him a tulpa, a thought form made real by collective belief. The idea haunted her. Had Pine Hollow's fear, their obsession with the story, brought him to life? Or was he something older, something the internet merely named? A week after Sarah vanished, Emma convinced Jack to go back to the woods. They had to find answers for Sarah, for Lucy. It was midnight when they returned to the oak trail. The air felt wrong, heavy with that same static hum. They found the tree with the circle X symbol, but now it was everywhere, carved into dozens of trunks like the forest itself was marked. Emma's flashlight flickered, her nose bled again. Then they saw him standing between the trees, his pale face a void in the moonlight. Jack whispered, "It's him," his voice trembling. The static surged, drowning out their screams. They ran, but the woods seemed to twist around them, the path looping back to that marked tree. Emma and Jack never made it out. The police searched again, finding only Emma's flashlight, its beam still flickering weakly. Sarah, Emma, and Jack were gone, their names added to Pine Hollow's list of missing teens. The official report called it a runaway case, but the locals knew better. They whispered about the woods, about the tall man who watched from the shadows. Some said it was just a story, a prank gone wrong. But others pointed to the trees, to the Circle X symbols that kept appearing no matter how many times they were sanded away. The Waukesha stabbing showed us how far belief can push people, how a story can grip young minds until fiction feels real. But what happened in Pine Hollow goes beyond that. Was Slender Man just a tale that consumed 3 kids, or did their fear give him form? I've searched for answers, on X, on old creepypasta forums, in police reports. There's nothing concrete, just static and shadows. If you're ever in Pine Hollow, stay away from the Oak Trail. And if you see a tall man in a suit with no face, don't look too long. A forgotten train platform stretches under a starless sky. The lights above it flicker in silence, bathing the tiled floor in dim cones of bluish glow. A single wooden bench stands in the center, cracked, rain-warped, and dusted with age. The air carries the smell of old iron and distant electricity, like a storm forever waiting to arrive. A large clock hangs above the platform, its hands motionless, frozen at 1 minute past midnight. Still, it ticks on. Far off, a train whistle occasionally breaks the stillness, but no trains arrive. Only the sound, only the echo, no birds, no insects. Just the hum of fluorescent lights and the hiss of wind that seems to breathe in cycles, almost like lungs. The announcements crackle, looping in a voice too smooth to belong to anything living. Next train arriving in 5, 4, 3, and then it resets again. Nothing moves, nothing changes. Time appears to pulse but never flows. A man named Alex waits on the bench. His coat is long, woolen, too warm for the season, but there is no warmth to the air here. His suitcase sits by his side, scuffed, handle bent, filled with things he no longer remembers packing. He checks his wristwatch. It still works. It reads 12:01 a.m. Above, the station clock reads the same, always the same. Alex doesn't remember arriving at the platform, only sitting, only waiting. A sense of purpose carried him here, though the reason now feels like a dream already dissolving. Sometimes he paces. The corridor behind him leads to stairs, but they only ever return to this same spot. No matter which turn he takes, the hallway curves back, subtly, gently. Each time he returns, the bench welcomes him like an old friend. A man in a dark overcoat appears at the far end of the platform, still, motionless. Alex waves once, no response. He blinks. The figure is gone. The announcements continue. Next train arriving in 5, 4, 3. But there is no sound of wheels, no headlights, no motion. On the wall, a station map curls at the edges. Every route on it leads to one place, circled over and over in red ink, Terminal Station. Alex follows the corridor again, but now there's a change, a new hallway, one he hasn't seen before. The lights buzz faintly, the walls breathe, just slightly, just enough to be felt, not seen. At the end of the hallway is a booth, once manned by an attendant, now empty. Behind the glass, a screen flickers to life. "Welcome home." He returns to the bench. His watch still reads 12:01. The man in the overcoat appears again, this time closer. Alex rises and follows. The figure moves ahead, always just around the corner. He leads Alex down to a train that waits in shadow. Its doors are open, its seats are empty. There's no conductor, no lights inside, but it feels familiar. Alex boards. The doors close, no motion, yet the world shifts. Out the window, only blur and mist. A quiet voice inside the train whispers, "Next station's Terminal." Alex moves through the cars. All are empty. In one, a mirror stretches across the wall. His reflection looks back, but it's older. Eyes sunken, coat darker. Same watch, same time. The lights flicker. He steps back out through the door and finds himself standing again at the platform. Same bench, same clock, same minute, 12:01. Something is wrong with the bench. It now bears a small brass plaque. His name, below it a single line engraved, "Passenger of Terminal Line." A whisper rides the wind, not words, just presence. He sits again, his body no longer tired, just still. The man in the overcoat sits beside him. His face remains turned away. From the corner of the platform, the announcement plays again. Next train arriving in 5. But no one moves. No one ever does. His station holds stillness like a breath held too long. The sky never lightens. The watch never ticks. The trains never come. But the presence lingers. The platform remembers. It keeps the names. It waits for the next. And the next. It always does. Thank you for listening to tonight's story on Haunted Hash. If the shadows whispered something to you, if the stillness stirred beneath your skin, then don't forget to subscribe for more tales that drift between sleep and fear. Until next time, rest easy. And remember, some platforms never let go.